Here we are. Hi, this is Anthony Parent of IRSMedic, and it's been a while since I've had any content up. And to help me get going again, I brought some very special guests, and you guys might recognize them. We have John Richardson of citizenshipsolutions.ca, truly one of the best attorneys in the world, and I really mean that. And of course, Keith Redmond, the man who brings it all together, the advocate for the global entrepreneur and U.S. person around the world. Thanks so much for joining me. So guys, I kind of checked out a little bit here as in my little sabbatical. So Keith, what exactly has been going on in the expat world in the past year or so?
Well, it's been quite interesting, especially, the past year or a little bit over. There's been a thing called a pandemic that I'm certainly the world has heard of, or the people on this call are going to be hearing of, know about.
They might know, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that's been a very big source of frustration for American immigrants, and that's with an E, Americans overseas, I'll say, and accidental Americans, is to renounce their citizenship. The U.S. embassies and consulates in many countries are still closed. So, and a number of them are caught between a rock and a hard place because of various reasons. One, because they're anxious to get out of the U.S. tax system because they just can't sustain moving forward with two incongruent tax systems. And then, for accidental Americans, with their bank accounts, they don't want to get a Social Security number to give to their bank. They just want to get a CLN, or certificate of loss of nationality. And the problem is that they're not accepting renunciations in many of the embassies and consulates. So what's happening there, and then I'll move on to some other things, is that the Association of Accidental Americans has brought a lawsuit against the U.S. State Department, and I believe other government entities as well. I'll leave it at that, to say, hey, this is not right. And also to talk about lowering the fees to like zero for people to renounce. Now, the other things that are going on are...
Well, Keith, can I just stop you there?
Yeah, please.
And just because some other people may be hearing about this too, and I just need a moment to digest.
I know.
What you just said there. So we've agreed that there are situations in which a U.S. person is forced to leave the U.S. tax system because the impracticalities make their lives unlivable.
Right. It's a twofold thing. The impracticalities, as you deem it, to make their lives unlivable or to live a normal life outside the United States and be a tax resident of the country in which they're living, plus dealing with the U.S. tax system. But in concert with that, because Fatca is the enforcement tool for citizenship-based taxation, they have problems with bank accounts and keeping their mortgages, etc. So you have two things going on in tandem.
Now this is for, we're taxing worldwide citizens, aren't we? That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Remember, the U.S. imposes its tax code outside the U.S. on tax residents of other countries.
All right, so I need John's wisdom here to help me guide through this part here. John, can you help me?
Well, I before we get to John, I need to say one more thing.
Commentary on. I need John. John, what do you? I mean.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Well, what's the question? What do I think about the renunciation issue? Is that what we're talking about?
Do you have a one-liner for this to help us? Do you have a one-liner for this situation when the United States government is making your life miserable overseas, where you have to renounce your citizenship, but they've taken away the ability to physically renounce your citizenship? Do we have?
Well, clearly, yeah. So clearly the one-liner would be all roads lead to renunciation. But I think the second thing, when they're not allowing you to do it, and I emphasize they are not allowing renunciations, okay, this is how this is perceived, is that sooner or later, people are going to simply have to find a way to declare themselves non-U.S. citizens and move on. That's it. I don't know what else they can do. I mean, they can't hold people captive or as prisoners forever.
No.
All right, Keith.
No.
Keith, go on with. All right, just need to get that little.
Now I'm not doing this.
Reality, though. I mean, what John's saying is kind of the reality. It's like, okay, but people will live. They will choose living over anything else.
Right, living a normal life over anything else. John's absolutely right. I mean, some countries are, have the U.S. embassies and consulates open. They're very few, but those people are fortunate there where they can go ahead and do the renunciation process. I think the other thing that has occurred since the last time we spoke, and this isn't necessarily an order of importance because everything is important, is that John and I are part of a new organization along with Karen Alpert, Laura Schneider, David Johnstone, Suzanne Herman, who are Americans overseas. We founded an organization called SEAT, S-E-A-T, Stop Extraterritorial American Taxation. And this is an organization that is for anyone, whomever that may be, adversely affected by extraterritorial American taxation. And we're just still finding our way, but there have been a number of important insights, papers, a survey that have come out of SEAT, which I think it's important to have it's important to have an overseas organization that addresses everyone who is adversely affected by the extraterritorial U.S. tax system. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Let's see. John, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Well, there's all these, one of the problems of getting change is, of course, that there are a number of different groups who are affected by this differently. And naturally, they tend to focus on, what their primary concern is, right? So the Accidental American group, for example, which, are profoundly unjustly impacted by this, probably don't file taxes in most cases, and they really see this as a banking issue, and they just want to renounce. So they're focused more on the banking issue and the renunciation. And we have, for example, the groups that are completely focused on the data privacy aspects of Fatca. But the thing is this, and so that's what they focus on. There's only one thing that will change the situation for all people all the time and for all purposes. And that's to get rid of, what the U.S. would call citizenship taxation. But what we know is the U.S. imposing the Internal Revenue Code on tax residents of other countries who are not residents of the United States. So SEAT, as far as I can tell, and this surprises me, is actually the only organization that is solely focused on getting rid of citizenship taxation. And by that, I mean a movement, when you get rid of citizenship taxation, you're moving towards what I would call a form of pure residence-based taxation, where citizenship has nothing to do with tax residency. And I mention that because a lot of the discussion going on now and over the years has really not been focused on that at all. It's been focused on, all right, let's let the U.S. continue citizenship-based taxation and just make it work a little bit better. Why don't we provide more exclusions, et cetera? And that is just total garbage, 100% garbage. The only thing that will solve this problem for all people is to get rid of citizenship taxation. No left-outs, no carve-outs, pure residence-based taxation now is what's required.
John, I love that. Yeah, and as I was thinking to you, one of the things that we've had through this channel is, I think, and we've noticed this, is the indifference that people have for those overseas, for the situations of those overseas. They are looked as others, and they left the country. And I'm thinking to myself, how could we appeal to more Americans? It's like, well, wouldn't you think that's a great safety valve for you to have, for you personally to have, to say, you know what, I'm not liking this so much, I'm going to go elsewhere. You vote with your feet.
Anthony,
that gives you a tool.
Yeah. On that point, if I may, there have been some absolutely shocking developments in this whole area. Very recently, the 10th Circuit handed down a decision. I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's Maher or something like that. But what the decision really said is that there's no constitutional right to leave the country. that's what the decision really means. Now, the problem is, as you know, Anthony, and I don't mean this as dumping on you or anybody in the tax world. Actually, it's a compliment that I have this conversation with you present. Okay. But, the problem is that in the tax world, people just look at, this is a passport revocation case. Well, you have a $50,000 debt. Of course, they can revoke your passport, blah, blah, blah. But question is, and that's how a tax person looks at this, just in terms of how the tax laws operate. But the problem with this, like most decisions in tax, it affects a lot of people in ways that are perhaps not contemplated while the decision is going on or while the arguments are going on. But the way they got there was basically that the right to leave the country, perhaps couched in the terms of international travel, is not an issue of sufficient importance, okay, or a value that's important enough to merit a high degree of scrutiny. So, this is totally amazing. Now, that's the first development.
It's not deemed a fundamental right whatsoever.
That's right. In other words,
national basis or.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the lawyer in you is coming out. So, for anybody listening to this who has any background at all in law, there's generally, at least historically, 3 levels of scrutiny, right? We have strict scrutiny, intermediate, and as you point out, Anthony, rational basis. So you are right on the money, my friend.
Oh, God.
The result of the decision was that the decision was only subject to rational basis scrutiny. Now, just for listeners, what rational basis means is not that it's just. It means that, hey, any moron in a gutter could come up with some reason for this law. That's all rational basis means.
And there you go. That's a great, I knew you were going to have a good standard. I knew it. FAK, he's going to have it. Yeah, it's the dumbest, that basically, yes, I agree that somebody with a pulse wrote that.
Exactly.
That's all it is. It's like, yeah, that's definitely, that looks like a law to me. And that's what the courts just sort of let go through. Yeah, that looks like a law to me. Who am I to guess that this makes this can't happen?
That's exactly right. It's total deference to the legislature. But let's just extend this a little bit. And, I think Keith was talking about, or maybe I just imagine, and it's early in the morning for me for some reason today. But there is this lawsuit that the Accidental Americans Association, I think, have brought against the renunciation fee. No, I don't think you mentioned that one.
Yeah, but just tangentially, I did.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so listeners, one of the things the Accidental Americans Association has done is brought a lawsuit against the State Department, basically complaining about the $2,350 fee. And part of the lawsuit, again, revolves around the importance of the right of expatriation.
Yeah.
And predictably, the U.S. government has responded in their reply that, one, there is no constitutional right to expatriate. All right, which is interesting, very interesting. Think of it, no constitutional right to expatriate. That's what they're saying. Now, to the credit of their lawyers, Mark Zell and company, they seem to have gotten around this in their reply to the reply by sidestepping the issue of whether expatriation was a constitutional right, but rather where it was an interest of elevated or sufficient importance, right, to trigger, some kind of higher level of consideration. I'm not sure how that's going, but what's interesting, where these things are at one, is we have the U.S. government's position is basically, buddy, you've got no right to leave the country unless we allow it. You've got no right to expatriate unless we allow it. So suck it up. We own you.
So from a layman's point of view, which is what I am, there's really no difference between an American and an East Berliner or an East German.
Yes, there is.
Would you agree or not agree?
No, there's a huge difference. We don't have an American president saying, Ich bin ein Berliner. Okay. For starters. There's not even, I think, any lip service.
Yeah. And the Soviets, the Soviets didn't hide their wall.
No, they didn't. It was physical wall.
Our wall
yes.
is totally hidden with this, with these, with these couched words and phrases.
Right. But the idea is the same.
Court opinions where judges in black robes decide what is life and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go. Wow.
Well, there's no question about it. And you know, what I'm seeing, you know, I've been involved in this whole expatriation stuff, you know, since it really, you know, became an issue, which is about a decade. The first part of it, for many years, it was Americans abroad or expatriating. And, you know, obviously I would include in that the accidentals. But what I'm seeing over the last couple of years is a huge surge in interest on the part of U.S. residents to expatriate. You know, it used to be I'd have a couple calls a year from those people. Now, not so. You know, there's a lot of people who are incredibly nervous. And that plays itself out to some extent is the number of U.S. residents who are interested in second citizenships now. Again, that was I'm a member of something called the Investment Migration Council, so I sort of an ongoing consciousness of this type of stuff. For years, the U.S. market was ignored in the industry. Now, you know, it's being tapped, and I actually think that because of the taxation and because of this attitude towards, you know, is there a right to leave the country? Now, remember also that as a U.S. citizen, you can't leave the country under the law without a U.S. passport, even, right? I mean, that's another form of control. But it seems to me that U.S. citizens, more than the citizens of any other country on the planet, need a second citizenship at this point.
Well, certainly, especially if they're living outside the borders of the U.S., that's a given. They need to acquire a second citizenship or do what they need to do.
There's two kinds of Americans who need a second citizenship. Those who live outside the United States and those who live inside the United States.
Yeah, right. John, what was the name of that 10th Circuit case again?
Sorry, could you repeat?
What was the name of that 10th Circuit case?
I think I don't know how to pronounce it. It's MEAHR. I will give it to you if you give me a second here.
Yeah. It's almost like Meyer
or something.
Yeah,
Laura Snyder wrote an incredible post on it. It's on the Seat Now website, seatnow.org.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really like all of Laura's stuff. It's
always very good.
Yeah, it's really good. Let me just see if I can get this for you. Okay.
Well, the decision isn't good.
No.
Oh,
no.
You'll find the there's a link to the decision. There's a link to the decision. You'll find it right there.
All right, I'll go to seat.org. Okay, great. All right, I'll find it. But I think
seatnow.org.
I think we might have to seatnow.org. Thank you, Keith. Yes. I think we might have to do a special podcast on just that alone.
I think we should. Yeah. What is astounding to me, Anthony, is, you know, you probably heard me on this topic before, but I am convinced that there is no better and more obvious place to mask the purest form of evil than a tax code. Would you agree with me? Oh, my favorite book. My favorite book.
Audio only. I'm holding up the copy of. I knew this would put a smile on your face. I was like, I got to grab this because I wanted to see a big smile on your face. You know, I don't have a lot of books around. This is one of them I keep. This is for good and for evil. This is written by this is the forward is by Charles Adams, who is a tax attorney.
Charles Adams is dead now. Now I am proud. I mean, rarely in life do I, get close to great people, except for you and Keith, of course. Okay. But, when I discovered that book, it's written by Charles W. Adams, who is deceased. But I was so pleased to see that he was teaching at the University of Toronto. I'm a University of Toronto graduate. He was actually teaching at the University of Toronto. He's not a Canadian. He's from California, whatever. But it was very interesting. He's been at this for ages. And if you do a web search, you'll find some amazing podcasts this guy has done. But all you have to do is look at the last chapter where he talks about, the worst things. And you'll see that right now the Biden administration is actually taking a page right out of it, with this bringing Fatca to the homeland, right?
Right. Who saw that coming, right? Just everybody, right? Like, we saw that, right? We all saw that coming, for what it was. Well, if you could do this overseas, then why not with anything for things that have no relation with tax? Clearly,
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think people don't, people say, I don't care. I don't have anything to hide. I mean, my answer to that is that may be, but you got everything to lose.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to get into that. We'll go on too long for trying to explain the motivations of people. I think we go on just focus on.
But I think I think this is a good segue because John and I attended a meeting. Was it been about 2 weeks now with Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney of New York, which was hosted by Jim Bitterman. He's a CNN correspondent in Paris. And I'm going to be very frank. I mean, I do certainly appreciate Congresswoman, Maloney's time to speak with Americans overseas on American overseas issues. At first, I thought it was a waste of time because there were a lot of issues that were just not, how would you say, they weren't getting it. But then I realized it actually wasn't a waste of time because we learned some nuggets of information. For example, she had stated that there is no will to change to RBT. She also, what I gleaned was she couldn't understand the concept of accidental Americans, which I can appreciate because she only received the information from her staff. But I think it was important for Americans overseas to know where someone in Congress stands and how difficult it's going to be. Hence, in my opinion, what John has stated many times, all roads lead to renunciation if one needs to have a normal life outside the U.S. That was my take on the meeting. John, you might have a different take or a similar take, but I was not encouraged, unfortunately.
I'm far more negative on it, so I'll leave it at that. I mean, I agree she doesn't understand. I don't think she understands the issues. I mean, I think it was just, a political thing to, give the impression that somebody is listening when actually she said they weren't listening.
Right.
And we're not going to listen. And the best that one could hope for was sort of a more perfect form of citizenship-based
taxation. Exactly.
Which obviously, but what struck me about it more than anything, there's some disagreement on how many people attended, but the maximum number that would have attended that who signed up was apparently only like 500. Apparently far fewer actually were there. But just think of it.
There were under 200 who attended. There were under 200.
All right. So there's under 200 who attend. There's all these people affected by it. I mean, my thinking on this has started to shift to the point that the problem is not the U.S. government at all. The problem is the individuals won't stand up for themselves,
Yeah, that's a major problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's where I think it is. And then you have the ones who are concerned about it are, trying to work on different projects when the only thing that will change this is a move to pure residency-based taxation. And I do believe that is achievable.
Sure, it is achievable.
I mean, think of it this way. The United States was able to put a man on the moon. But somehow to move to residence-based taxation is too technically complex.
Well, that's why it can't be done by God, because it's not complex. That's why it can't be done until revolution.
You make a really good point, Anthony. You make a good point. It's too simple for the American mind.
Right, it is. No,
you do it.
It's just, and that's where I get, that's where I get a little bit frustrated with people myself, is like people who I'm trying to explain how it is, and maybe they're a guest on my show. And I'm thinking that, well, based on what you said here, you're not really understanding the real issue. You're not getting the fact that we're going above and beyond. You're not asking the question, why? Why is this necessary? Are we looking for revenue, or is the government looking for control? I could point, it's always control. I could point that there's no revenue required for this because in the last year, the IRS and SBA, they've just been giving out money, haven't they? Man, they've been your best friend.
Yeah.
And that's why you can't get through if you're trying to set up an installment agreement for one of your clients. Hey, I got a client who owes some money. Oh, you can't get through. Why is that? Oh, because the IRS is too busy trying to handle all the refunds. So that was sort of like, okay, so the IRS is now mired in its own Because when I look at this is the IRS, it's basically press service for the IRS. Like, well, if we send refunds out to people, they'll like us. Well, I guess for a bit, but then you're back to being the IRS, though, and now you want that money back too. And, so
it's madness. It's reached the point where,
and I think maybe in the madness, I've been lost on where to take this channel. That I've been lost because I started this channel off basically, look, it was lead generation for my law firm, and it worked great. Mm-hmm. It worked better than I could possibly imagine. I don't need it to do that anymore. I could kind of do anything, and that allowed me to do a lot of other projects with you guys. That I didn't have to go, and to be able to take the channel a little bit more where I wanted to go. But then now look, it's like, okay, well, my job is IRSMedic here. Okay, well, how do I help someone?
I think our collective services in different ways help facilitate Americans overseas and possibly accidental Americans in ridding themselves of U.S. citizenship. And I hate to say that. I really do.
Well, Keith, right there, you said, you segregated Americans to overseas. It's like, no. We have to say something for Americans. We have to say for people. You can't segregate for this or that, for freedom. Look, if you're not here, you don't. Yeah. That's the way it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's as simple as it is. And it's just basically a concept of freedom. And so as I'm looking and I hold up my book of good and evil, and I think the wonder that Charles Adams did and how he helped someone like me so much. I thought I was pretty knowledgeable about things. And then I realized how utterly ignorant of history and how things actually work are. So much so I say For Good and Evil is the second most important book after the Bible. Because if you can understand this, you get it. You understand life. You understand how things and systems are going to work all the time, invariably. And so as I'm thinking of where I want to take this channel, I think we have this indifference that people have to the concept of freedom.
True.
They don't want it, Anthony. They don't want freedom.
Well,
I think it's
too much work for most people.
I agree. Most people don't. Most people want to be on their hamster wheel, told them they're good hamsters, and they're so used to the squeak of the hamster wheel. Without it there, they'll die. They will die without that. I mean, I know that. But I'm not talking about all the people. I don't care about them. There's enough people, though. There is enough people who love freedom. And the patriots of the United States of America, we were never more than a third of the population. But we knew what we were talking about. We meant business. And so that's all we really need is one united. We don't need a united people, but the people who love freedom need to be united. That's what has to happen. And I think
we need to. I think we also need. We're going down a different path here a little bit, but I think we also need to define what freedom is, because freedom to you might be different than freedom to me. That might be different from freedom to John. It's one of these words in the American lexicon that's overused and used as a weapon. So what does freedom actually mean? And
I guess I am defining it by because I could define it by the negative. Mm-hmm. Just define freedom as a lack of government intrusion.
That's one definition. Sure. And certainly within the realm of what we're talking about, that certainly is apropos.
Or entity.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's why Americans are renouncing. I mean, that's why they want to get rid of their U.S. citizenship so they can live freely.
Well, so they can live more freely.
More freely. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, it is. Keith, after any other updates, other big updates, because we might need to handle some other ones in other episodes.
Yeah, I think
that you have. And John, you have the updates that you have. I know you've touched on some cases.
Yeah, I don't have any more updates that I can think of aside from, the American Expatriates group. Even with Facebook acting kind of weird, has been growing. We're at 7,500 members now, which is quite incredible. I think to all those people who are listening out there, more participation from Americans overseas and standing up for their rights, and stop voting for people who are not going to stand up for your rights. I don't care what political party you're from. Stop. We need to have those people.
That's something maybe we should talk about here a little bit, Keith. First of all, I am nonpartisan. I am an independent. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to say that first.
You're making
because what I find is when you discuss this stuff, that any criticism of any political party, they just start talking about the other party.
Correct.
Like I was having a discussion about, what the Democrats were trying to do the other day, and the person started talking about the Republicans. I said, why are you talking about the Republicans? I thought we were talking about the Democrats.
Right.
And then she said to me,
and vice versa. Because
you have to vote for one or the other.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. I mean, you don't. And on the Americans abroad issue, I do think that there's some significant stuff that's going on that I honestly think that people ought to consider. I think it was Ronald Reagan who had the expression, if they don't see the light, we're going to make them feel the heat, right? And after listening to the Carolyn Maloney thing, I have my doubts as to whether a political solution to this is actually possible, because it's not that they don't care; it's that they don't care that they don't care, right?
Well,
okay.
I would even go beyond that. Is they want it to be failure, because in this confusion, you can't. There's so much to fight at. You can't. The more every individual is weakened in this country, the less each individual is a personal threat to their political.
Exactly. And so there's a huge incentive also to divide and conquer. Okay. But what's going on here? Now, most Americans abroad appear to me to be Democrats. I've met maybe 2 or 3 Republicans abroad in my whole life.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, they
but
appear
I
to
would
be
agree.
Democrats.
Yeah.
So, but the Democratic Party, Democrats abroad is on this big campaign to sign up Americans abroad to vote for Democrats, right? And I understand that because, they're part of the DNC and their job is to go out and get votes. But Americans abroad need to understand that if they vote for the Democrats, they are voting for a continuation of the abusive, horrific policies that are destroying their lives. And, this is not a partisan thing at all. I'm not saying, go out and vote Republican. I'm just stating a simple, I was going to say fact, but I think I'll say the simple Fatca of the matter, right?
Okay.
Because this is the party of Fatca. This is the party of citizenship taxation. They're also claiming, perhaps with justification, that the overseas vote put them over the top in the presidential election in Arizona and Georgia. Well, if that's the case, then Americans abroad can kind of take that back, right? And it would seem to me, going back to Reagan's, if they don't see the light, we're going to make them feel the heat. The time has come for Americans abroad to make them feel the heat and make it clear they are not going to vote for these people without some kind of change. I don't understand why that is so difficult to comprehend. And I also don't understand, for listeners, what that has to do with the Republicans.
Right. Both parties have done their own damage to Americans overseas.
But the Republicans are not represented overseas particularly. Okay?
No, not to the degree that Democrats are. Correct.
Democrats are, and that's the key point here.
And this is what I would say. There's no politician in America right now that I can think of that actually wants to do what's necessary to the tax code. So that I wouldn't trust any Republican as far as I could throw a Democrat. That's just the truth. I happen to be a Republican.
They're only going to respond to if they think it costs them. That's it.
There are so many state interest holders in the tax industry.
Yes.
You're not going to get any politician. I don't care, any current politician to actually do what's necessary, because what you're asking them to do is cut off their own hand and cut off the other hand that's robbing you. They're not going to do that. That's why they're there. The purpose of them being there is to steal from you. But you're asking the people who are stealing from you to say, could you not steal as much from me? And sometimes they will, because we stole so much from you, now we can't steal any more from you. So sometimes they'll back off for their own self-interest. But there's no one who's saying, actually, all of this is wrong. That's where I would say it's like, no, everyone's wrong, because it's all about, I mean, the first thing you heard out of President Trump was, oh, well, we'll keep the standard deduction or some stupid games like that. And that wasn't even reform. I mean, totally. If the analogy here, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Well, it actually even got worse. Don't forget.
And it's going down and pointing the finger at the boiler, pointing the finger at the captain or the navigator. Does it matter?
Yeah.
It's a piece of crap. And it's going down, and we're acting like, oh, we could patch it up with this other fix.
It can't be patched.
Well, our fixes are a convoy of bullshit behind us. We don't even know what's there. Nobody even knows what's there.
Anthony,
Congress people, okay, here, we'll pass one law.
Anthony, I got a question for you.
Yeah, what's that?
Are you looking forward to the Democrats passing this tax bill so that we can see what's in it?
Oh, I don't even know. It doesn't matter what the law is. That's the thing. That's what's hard for me at this point to say, what does it matter what the law is? Because we have the IRS makeup law. We know that. Effectively, the IRS or the OVDP made up a whole series of law with no administrative review.
Right.
And they did that with HTML. And that was it. We did it with a bunch of FAQs. We created this entire area of law on a website, and that was it.
That's right.
So the IRS doesn't need the law. No one needs law. And when the law says you have to do something, that means you don't have to do it. So that's the point of any lawyer at this point. It's like, well, we're really not lawyers, because in the law world, laws in fact matter. That's what you're trained on. What's the facts? What's the law? How do we apply the facts to the law? What does it matter at this point? And that's sort of been my frustration. How do I help people when it doesn't matter? And that's like, just be lucky is my guess. Like, don't get caught in something, be lucky, have a good sense of humor, a bunch of abundance, patience, think about other things. There's lots of coping skills that I would suggest, but I think voting for either political party and expecting a different result.
Yeah. That's perfect. The definition of insanity.
Right. And I think that's really the problem I had, is that the last guest I had on earlier, Keith, wonderful lady, but she voted for the person who's been the problem in Washington, D.C. for 50 years. So everything that she's railing against, well, she just voted for the person, and that's sort of the problem I have. I'm like, well,
and I think, and it is a problem within the American overseas community that they will vote against their own interests as if they are living in the United States.
And in that, and voting, right, and it's as if they're trying to hurt someone else. But in their attempt to hurt someone, they're only hurting themselves. That's sort of the thing. And how did you get tricked into doing that? How did you get tricked into doing that? Right. And that's where you got to step back to say, wait a second, were you manipulated? The answer is yes, of course. You've been conditioned to believe the IRS is a good thing that gives you refunds certain times of the years. Not that they steal everything and have any right to anything that you want. And you cannot actually comply with them because it's basically impossible if you don't understand someone, because there's no one who can explain it to you. You're ultimately responsible for everything you sign, even if you don't sign it. And, right, John, you can't even leave the country now if you don't want to be a part of it either. So the word is captive. We have a captive tax system, I would say.
Well, Anthony, maybe another way to view it, since we were talking a little bit about constitutional law earlier, I'd be interested in your answer to this question. Do you think it's reached the point in the United States where the Internal Revenue Code is actually the Constitution of the United States?
I would almost agree with that. However, they don't even look at it.
Sorry?
The IRS doesn't even look at the tax code. They'll look at it when they want to. So I would say, the tax code is, I guess in this analogy, it wouldn't be the Bible. It'd be more of a Talmud of sorts that is randomly looked at when it suits them. And words only mean the thing that they want it to mean. It can't mean what you think it means. And if they want to change it, that's okay too. And if they don't want to give you no really meaningful review, that's okay too. The key here is to be lucky, as I said. Remember that, my advice here. Be lucky and
Do you feel lucky, punk?
You feel lucky here because we're all taking a chance. John, what do you have are there any new updates we have in the last year that you can think of that you want to hit on? And I think we're going to have to, you guys are getting me fired up again here. I think.
Well, be fired up for subsequent podcasts.
No, I can't think of any. Probably, but I can't think of anything.
Right.
Well, it just the continuum of abuse, neglect, callous disregard.
And I call it worse than abuse. I call it the terrorization of Americans overseas, the continued terrorization by the U.S. government, both parties. I mean, we have examples left and right.
There, Keith, I have a beautiful conclusion for us today. I have.
What's that?
Because it's from my favorite book. I'm going to read it, and cause today this for some reason, because this is what's great about the book, and I got to put a link to Amazon for everyone to grab this book. You really should know it. And I like the print copy because I just like to have it around me all the time, and I have my little notes in it. So I want you to guess which radical wrote this, which fire-breathing radical wrote this. And here's a clue: it's a very old passage.
Okay.
And let's see if John will get it.
Just a minute, Anthony. Okay. I have the hard copy.
Oh, there you go. Oh, geez, is yours signed?
No, is yours?
No, I got it. Yeah, it's too. Yeah, we've got to find a sign. Okay, so here it is. So here's the quote: "The more one governs, the less one achieves the desired result. The more restrictions and prohibitions there are in the world, the poorer the people will be. The more laws are promulgated, the more thieves and bandits there will be."
I think that's absolutely true.
And we need to guess who this was done.
And I had no clue that this person wrote it.
Okay.
Did he write that, or was he quoting it? Charles Adams.
There's some ellipses in there.
Yeah.
Charles Adams is quoting someone.
An American?
No. No, America didn't exist.
Okay.
America was far from existing.
Laws have been a problem, since the beginning of time.
A religious leader.
A religious leader.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about the man.
No, this is no one that would be in the Bible. But a religious leader, and surprising how the wisdom of this, I'm just blown away because I couldn't think of it.
Gandhi?
No, it's Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism.
Wow.
He wrote that 2,500 years ago.
God, it's really discouraging that they had laws 2,500 years ago and they still continue, isn't it?
Right, they have the laws, right. And so if this was written 2,500 years ago based on the laws that he saw, I don't even know if he'd be able to wake out of bed in the morning. And I think that this over-regulation is part of the whole thing to break us all down, where we don't even assume that we fight for the rights that we still sort of have, that we just roll over and just accept this. So, the one thing that we can do is at least tell the truth, right, about what it is. That's the one thing I can do.
Yes.
That's one thing that we all can do.
I think maybe what you should do here, to go back to your question of where you should take your channel, why not rename it Good and Evil?
There's something. I think it's
a tribute to Charles W. Adams.
I even have a better idea. Why don't we encourage people who are listening to this to comment on it on the IRSMedic YouTube page, or when it's posted in the American Expatriates group, some suggestions on where to take the channel as well. Thank you, Keith. You're absolutely right. And I was about to say that, and if I didn't, my good friend Ryan Sokash, who I'm sure is watching to this, he said, "Anthony, I'm going to kill you. You didn't learn anything from me." So I just want to let you know. Thank you, Keith. Yeah. So let us know if you think this would be a good channel to take it to, where I'm really looking at some of the things that you're not aware of. Somebody might say something we're not even thinking about. There's so. You know what? By the way, Ryan and I took a look at our subscribers. We have an incredible, we have the smartest people watching. You might have to introduce who Ryan is to your subscribers. Some of our subscribers, and of course, guests like Keith and John, absolutely. But we have some really brilliant people following us. We took a look at the end. Advertisers really like you guys, by the way.
Really like you guys. High value audience, apparently. So thank you. Incredibly, the highest. Yeah, Ryan, that cracked him up when he's like, oh my God, you have, oh my God. He was very impressed. I was like, as was I. So thank you all very much. So really, I'd love to get some ideas about some things that you would want to talk about, some things from history. I've done some things before, which I guess I could even tease with that. I did do a little historical project. Maybe I'll put the link to that. I did put a video up. I did a project for Ryan on its history. I guest hosted an episode. And so you can find the link for that. That was something I did. I had a little bit of fun with that. So I'll post a link to that for people to watch. A little project.
You might want to explain to the audience who Ryan is.
So Ryan Sokash is a U.S. expatriate. If you're in Poland, if you're in Eastern Europe, you know who he is already. He's a pretty famous dude. For those in America, around the world, Ryan is a global entrepreneur. He had a huge tax issue. He found my YouTube channel years ago. We became great friends. He's an expert on YouTube and has helped me out amazingly. And I've learned a tremendous amount of things from him. And he's been a guest, and he's had some content on here. And he had his own experience. And I was thinking of him because he went to the Polish consulate to renounce. And when you said, "Oh, the consulates were closed," but I just visualized the Polish consulate. Like, oh, wow, what would Ryan do? I'm like, oh, he'd be calling me like, Anthony, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, oh, geez, dude, what are we going to do? So that's something. I'll put a link to that below. So I want to thank John and Keith. Thank you so much, guys, for your insight and your passion and sticking out there for the fight. IRSMedic for good and for evil. Well, we'll just say for good. How about that? We'll leave the evil to the government.
There you go.
This is Anthony Parent. Thanks so much for watching. Again, please comment what you'd like to see this channel to do, and like if you like this video. Thanks a lot.